Core Sear, our non-stimulant, thermogenic, and recomposition agent. Core Sear is a super cool product because it's going to help you utilize turning your white adipose tissue, which is for storage of fat, into brown adipose tissue, which is going to help with energy production. So this is great to use for a competition prep or in your weight loss phase. So you can stack it with a stimulant-based thermogenic, or you could also use it in your off-season or muscle building phase to help keep you lean and mean. Core Sear.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. Today, we've got a fun topic. We're going to go over why your meal plan sucks and how to tell if your coach actually knows what the hell they're doing or if you are a part of a coaching mill. We'll define that term. But first, let's break into a little bit of this weekend's show. Lexie, we've got an interesting show, the first ever pro show attached to a national show in the United States. Now, this is very, very common outside of the United States.
Yes. Yeah. I was excited to see this list. As we all know, usually the list comes out like Monday evening, Tuesday morning. And so the cool thing about this list is it's going to be a lot bigger because essentially anybody who wins their pro card this weekend at Junior Nationals will have the opportunity to go onto the pro stage, make their pro debut at this show the same exact day, which I don't feel like, I mean, if I had that opportunity, like, why not, right? You've got nothing to lose. But this list is, like you said before, Paul, I don't think anybody on this list is qualified quite yet for.
False. I see somebody. The young lady that won Toronto, Maxine Alexandra Somov. I believe that's her.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. And she looked really, really awesome.
Yeah, great
So,
balance.
Yes. Great balance, great shape. You see a couple of other people on here. So like Yulia Baba, who's been very close a couple times recently to getting her Olympia qualification. Masa, who got second at DC Pro 2 weekends ago. And then we also see Jody Yunkner is on here too. And she can
She's
compete.
been an Olympian. Also, Sierra Swan is a two-time Olympian.
She
Yeah,
on
Sierra
here?
came close
She's
for a few shows.
I think she's gotten second twice this year.
Yeah, she got
Yes.
second to Ashley at the Louisiana show, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Ashley, ding dong, the witch is dead. She got beaten by our friend Kate from New Zealand. So I wasn't there. I don't know. I looked at the pictures and it just looked like Kate was really full and hard and Ashley was a little softer in the glutes. But when you're not there, it's hard to tell.
Right. I was Ashley did a live after the show and she did post a little bit about her feedback and she actually said for the first time ever she got feedback that she was too big, like too muscular. So that was her feedback from the show.
She's too muscular. That's interesting.
Yeah. My assumption is just needs to be tighter. I think sometimes feedback goes that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would never define her as too big. But
the surprise in this show, I'm going to call it now. I'm going to call it now because there's someone on this list that's never won before. And in fact, I don't think she's ever placed particularly well at the pro level, but her shape and her look is so good. She's just never been conditioned, but she competed earlier this year. And if Stacy Correa comes in on, she could be this, obviously we know first call out's going to be, Masa and Yulia and, probably Maxine who just won and Sierra and Jody. And, maybe there'll be some other names in there, but Stacy is going to be my sneaky pick.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm just looking at the list now. I don't know if you guys realize this. I believe this is who it is, but Anastasia Sparkins. I think that is Stacy who won the Arnold Amateur. I think that's who that is. So she's also in this lineup as well.
Okay.
I think that's her.
It might be. I mean, she kind of started to fade at the after the Arnold. She looked good, and then so if she comes back, reinvigorated, tighter, like she looked at the Arnold, she's a handful.
My pick Sierra Swan. She's always like right there in the top mix, and they like her.
Yeah, I mean,
and she doesn't miss very often.
Yeah, Sierra's super consistent. She's definitely going to be fighting for it. Yeah, even Hope Castelli. I love her shape. She hasn't been like dialed in this year. That's what's great about the pro bikini. Like, these girls can go away for a couple weeks and come back and you're like, whoa, who's that? So they all do the work.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it was pretty cool to see Masa 2 weekends ago at DC. I mean, she hadn't competed and I 2 or 3 years and then to come back and get second. So,
You know, the thing is, if Ashley K got feedback that she's too muscular, you
yeah,
know, I wasn't there, but you know, historically Masa's on the more muscular side. She is taller, so it, you know,
he is.
it suits her, but it'll just be exciting to see. And there's you know, the other thing, there's always just names on this list that I'm just not familiar with that you just go, oh wow. These girls pop out. So I have a young lady doing the show, Ashley Quick from Canada. So I'm excited to see her. She's looking really good. And I'll tell you this, this is what I'll say. The edge might go to the girl that wins the overall at the show, because there's
Good.
no one on here that's unbeatable. And what would you say right now if Ali Vathauer walked off the stage and walked into this lineup last
She would
year?
have won. She would have
I
won.
think she would have won.
Yeah.
I
I
just
think that
she-
was Allie's best look. I think she
Right.
murdered that look.
Yes,
Yeah,
she was on and full and tight, and she, you know, she could have walked right onto the pro stage, and I'm maybe one in this group. There's no one on here that, you know, is unbeatable. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who wins that overall and how they do in the pro show.
If whoever wins that overall is very good, I would be very shocked if they're not first call
It's
outs.
going to be somebody very good. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
there's a lot of good competitors going to this show. So
well, I think
They'll be first calls for sure.
I think psychologically too, as a judge, you know, when you see somebody and you're rewarding the overall winner and you've seen them multiple times on stage, and then like psychologically they're already in your brain and then they hop back on the pro stage. I think that says a lot too. They're fresh in your brain. Your eyes automatically going to be drawn to them. So yeah, I would agree. I feel like that overall winner will do very well.
they'll definitely be in the first call out, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's move on to the topic today, which, so for anyone that doesn't follow my Instagram, I made a post yesterday, a reel about a meal plan that I received that I had to actually retype it up, because I'm not in the business of calling out names or coaches or teams or anything like that. I just want to raise the awareness for the athletes to understand kind of expectations. I don't know that everyone that comes into this sport has the right expectation. They think, oh, this is bodybuilding. You know, I've been told that many times. Oh, I'm on the diet. I'm on the meal plan. And so this was a female competitor who was, I believe at the beginning of prep, when we spoke on the phone, she was about 160 pounds. She was down to 130, and she had been on this meal plan for a while. And it at first glance, I was like, okay, so there's a lot of protein here. But then I said, let's plug it in and look at the macros. And it was around 110 grams of protein, around 40 carbs or 30 carbs, and like 10 fat. And I was immediately like, wow, like how have you survived this? And she wasn't on any anabolics. She was on clenbuterol, which does have some anabolic properties, right? I think it can help a little bit of muscle retention.
A little bit.
But I was amazed at how good this athlete was doing, you know, mentally. And she had said, well, she was starting to have some, you know, disordered eating thinking. She had her cycle for a month straight. You know, that's a concern. And obviously her body was starting to shut down a little bit. It was the end of the prep. So when she reached out to me, it actually worked out great. We were able to transition. She's doing wonderful now. But that's the scary part, is that these meal plans, to me, I don't know. There's just almost no effort put into it. And that's the concern. So we put out a post yesterday and we got a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I've noticed with some coaches how they coach, and again, not calling anyone out on this, it's they'll start with a baseline meal plan, right? And then what they'll do is they will just start removing from that meal plan. They don't adjust it, they just remove. And before you know it, at the end, they're at 600 calories. And I
Right,
don't
like
even
take out
think
the
some of
rice
these-
from meal 3, right?
yeah,
Like that.
they just reduce, that's all they do. So depending on where someone's starting point is on there, their food could be at a decent spot. And then when they're not making enough progress, they just pull it out. They just raise cardio and cut food with no real thought behind it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's acceptable for most people. They just assume, oh, prep
Don't
is
know
going to
any
be hard. And it's funny, I thought by now, I don't know, because this was something that was quite common 10, 12 years ago when I came into the sport. There was a couple big name teams that are since gone. I take great pride in the fact that they're gone, because, you know, people now know the term cookie cutter, right? They know if they sit down with a girl on their team that's in figure and you're on the same training plan and the same meal plan, something's wrong. But I think there's still enough new people coming into the sport that don't know any different, that are just like, oh, this is prep. So I don't know, how should we approach this, Lexie? Should we go over like?
Yeah, I think we could, we can, like you mentioned, we're not trying to call anybody out or anything like that, but I think we can, we can maybe go over just talk through some of the meal plans that we got sent that were like really baffling. And then maybe talk a little bit about just like some general red flags, because I also think that what we're not trying to say is not all meal plans are awful, right? Some meal plans can be really great. But there's definitely some things you need to know to look out for on meal plans. And I think we can discuss some of those things. So we could start with either, or we could go through some of the meal plans we got, or we could talk a little bit about like just red flags and our opinions on some of the meal plans that we see.
I think the most important thing, if you have a meal plan, is how were you given the meal plan, right? So like, if you're given a meal plan by one of us, it's going to be based on a conversation that we had around, I actually send my clients a questionnaire that want a meal plan. Most of my clients prefer just to, hit their macros. But every now and then someone's like, Coach, I just want to be told what to eat. I say, okay. I actually send them a questionnaire and I say, what foods do you prefer? And so then we'll come up with a meal plan. And my favorite thing, because it happens every time, send them a meal plan. The first email I get, hey, instead of a sweet potato, could I have this? I go, aha, I got you.
Figured it out.
You're doing macros. So yes, you can. I'm not rewriting your meal plan every week. That's nutrition. That's flexible dieting. So yeah, not all meal plans are bad. And in fact, I would go as far to say is like everybody in prep should be on a meal plan, but it should be specific to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
And I always tell my clients too that, I think anybody who asks for a meal plan, the reasoning behind that is typically because they don't want to have to think. They don't want to have to think about, what they need to eat. They don't want to have to do the mental math and the macros. But the way I look at it is macros can be as flexible or as strict as you want it to be. Especially if you're in prep, and this is probably what you were kind of getting to, Paul, is you're generally going to know what your macros are for the next week, or at least the next several days. So what I generally recommend doing is take those macros, come up with a full day of eating that adds up to those macros, and just stick with that. Don't change it up every day. You don't need to just, kind of rinse and recycle that same day of eating until, maybe you're running into issues or maybe you want to swap out something. But I think having that consistency and limiting variability day to day can be really helpful, especially when we're talking, if you're in a contest prep.
And how I do meal plans and how most people do meal plans. Well, unfortunately, this is not how most people do meal plans. Is I just base it off macros. So I'm like, okay, we need to be at this macro count. And then I build the meal plan around to reach that macro count, which is the same thing as what everyone on a macro plan should be doing for themselves in a contest prep. That's it. And just like you, Paul, like the vast majority of time I send a meal plan out to somebody, they'll say, hey, can we swap this for this? I'm like, we sure can. Can you swap it on your sheet? Nope. Let's learn how to do the macros on this.
Yeah.
And then we learn. Now, of course, I'm not like that hard on it. If it's something very simple to start, of course, we can swap it out. But it's an opportunity to teach people how to do things. And flexible dieting, the way I look at flexible dieting is you just create your own meal plan.
Yeah.
With it. And and when I adjust a meal plan, I'm like, okay, we need to peel 75 carbs off this day. And then I go through and I peel off food to make that match. I just don't peel off food randomly.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, if you guys have noticed this too, but I generally find that people who, like, athletes who know how to track their macros, they're comfortable with it, they're confident with it, they have a greater awareness and a greater understanding of food. And those are usually the same people that, maybe they go on a vacation or they go on a trip and they're not in prep, but, they just choose not to track on that trip. And then they come back and their weight is stable, they maintained, they
Yep.
ate intuitively, but they still just, they were smart, they were balanced with their choices. And they're able to do that because they know basic fundamentals about food. They know what has protein, they know what has carbs, they know what has fat. Whereas if you're just fed a meal plan and you don't have to think about it, it may seem great in the moment, but it doesn't really teach you anything about food. And then anytime you're not on the meal plan, you feel extremely lost and you're like, you have no idea what to do.
And here's the deal when it comes to meal plans and thinking about things. If you don't understand what the macros are in your meal plan, you don't know if your meal plan is good or not good. You don't know. You have no idea. I mean, I received some meal plans for some people. They're like, "Oh, this is abusive." And they send it to me. I'm like, I wouldn't consider it abusively low. It's
No, I had a
low.
girl yesterday send me her meal plan, and I looked it over and I said, "Oh man,
It's not bad."
the fats were 30. Not, I wouldn't probably be that low at most of prep, but I think the carbs were 90 and the protein was 140. I go, these are appropriate macros. This could be just depending on where you're at in prep.
Yeah.
So yeah, like just because you're on a meal plan, don't assume that it's bad. The problem becomes so the immediate red flags for me is if you have a female competitor and she's at or anywhere near 200 grams of protein. That is the first thing that I see, because I go, okay, there's no thought put into this. They're just throwing a meal plan that they probably had a guy on at them. The other one is extremely low fat, because I think people that don't understand nutrition, they go, oh, fat makes you fat, or whatever that correlation is. They don't understand that fat is responsible for all the hormones in our body, our digestion, our skin, our nails. So like they just start pulling fat. And those are the two, like, and then obviously more than likely they're afraid of carbs too. Anytime I hear anyone go, oh, I'm not allowed to have any carbs, I only get, or something like I get as many vegetables as I want or something, I'm like, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, that's going to mess with your digestion. And look, you can push fats low for a few days here, but
Yeah.
the way people are on this stuff, and we talk about things, sometimes things require some extreme measures to get to where you need to go for certain small spurts on
Right.
things. And certain people, like me in particular, if you were to ask me, would you rather have 50 grams of carbs or no carbs in your diet? I want 0 carbs in my diet because my body doesn't do well off that super low amount. It messes with my blood sugar. But that's me personally. That's very few people that are like that. Also about knowing what someone's height and weight, right? Like if it's like I have a girl that's at 100 pounds right now, and her fats are on the lower side of thing, and her carbs are 70, and her protein's 120. And she is totally fine. She's not even hungry because she's a small girl. But if that same plan was given to somebody who's 135 pounds, it's a different story.
Yeah. I think if I encourage anybody who has a meal plan to, and I've seen some coaches, like, they'll give a meal plan and they'll actually list the macros at the end of the meal plan, which I think is great. But I encourage, if you're somebody who has a meal plan and that isn't the case and there are no macros listed on it, I would take all the food on your meal plan. I would log it, using my Fitness Pal or whatever app you want to use, just so you can actually see where your protein, fats, and carbs lie. Because a lot of times, I mean, I would kind of say that's a red flag if you're getting a meal plan and it doesn't give you any numbers or show you the total amount of things you're eating. But you can take matters into your own hand and do a little bit of calculating and actually see where you're at. See if you're at these extreme levels of protein, super low fat, super low carbs, just to create that awareness.
Yeah. So I think that's the illusion, is that, carbohydrates are bad, fats are bad, protein is great. If you're over consuming protein, it's going to mess up your digestion. You're also missing out on the benefits of the other. If you can drop 50 grams of protein, that's 200 calories that you could allocate towards carbs and fats and likely perform much better. There's also a lot of these plans that say no sodium, don't salt, no sauces.
Yes.
That's another red flag for me.
Oh yeah. Especially like when you're eating in a meal plan, when all of your food is like it's very whole food, you need to be salting your meals even more so, because because you're not going to be getting any sodium from your food if it's all like whole foods and singular ingredient things. So you need to be salting your meals. So yeah, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah, my
And when your
sodium
food,
intake is usually, I say, around 3,000 to 3,500 milligrams a day should be your baseline.
yeah, and if your carbs are lower, sodium definitely needs to freaking be there. Or else you're going to get 0 pump. You're going to get 0 anything with that.
Yeah. And again, sodium does not make you retain water. I think that's the other assumption. Oh, I don't want to. So, your body changes. Yeah. If you have a huge spike in sodium for a day or two, you might, but if you're always at 3, 4, 5,000, that's going to be your baseline. You're not going to hold any water from that.
You'll be dry as a bone on stage. If you keep your sodium consistent, your water consistent for a few weeks leading up, you'll be dry as a bone.
I did get a meal plan from somebody, and Man, this is another one that, so it has Anavar, 10 milligrams AM and PM. That's pretty aggressive.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Metformin, 500 milligrams AM and PM. Liquid clenbuterol and Nolvadex. And Nolvadex is the one that makes me nervous. That's the anti-estrogen.
How much clenbuterol?
You will take 3 drops before fasted. So
Oh,
I don't know if this
that's
person
fun. So you don't
is
even know how
that,
much they're
how
taking.
many micrograms is that? I don't know
I
what the
haven't.
drops are. It
I
doesn't
don't.
say.
I don't know. I
I'm
don't.
wondering if this person either sells it or
It's a research chemical. That's what some people. If it's not in a pill form, you get it from a research site, and it's hard to gauge any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
this plan also says train butt 2 times a week. That's
Hmm.
professional.
You know what? I feel like maybe I got that same one because somebody sent me something too, and I saw that they said train butt, and I was like,
Just
okay,
train butt? No, no,
yeah,
just train butt.
it
It
said
doesn't
butt.
it doesn't have a workout plan. If that's, listen, if you're listening to this and this you're on a plan that says train butt and it doesn't tell you how many sets, how many reps, like gosh, we can get into a whole red flags for training programs, but
Yeah. Here's two things too. If
bizarre.
your coach uses the word butt in your program instead of glutes, and if they use the word gear instead of supplementation, those two things are big red flags there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just looking this over and well, at least it does say salt to taste.
Oh,
Ooh.
well, that's consistent too.
Fasted cardio 5 days a week, which I'm fine with fasted cardio, although it has no benefit over not fasted, but I just prefer it because I like to do it in the morning.
Mhm. Feels good to me.
Yeah, I like having it done, but
You know what's interesting, and it's I was just looking through my question box I put up,
terrible meal. This is a
and
terrible meal plan.
it's kind of sad that I just did the math that I got like over 30 people that responded to it. That means 30 people.
Lexie, I feel like girls love you. They resonate with you. Like so many people reach out to me and how much they love you. So yeah.
Oh. Well, I think thank you for that. I think it's just sad though to see that there are this many responses to this question, and I'm glad we're making this podcast because I think it's
And
I
it's so funny. I don't know. I always go through this thing where I think like, okay, coaches are going to figure this out. Like coaching is such a fun job and it's so awesome. You get to work with amazing people. Why don't you want to fucking do a good job for them? That's what makes me mad. It's like these
I
athletes
don't
work
think they
so
know any
hard,
better.
and
I don't think they know
these
any better.
girls that come to me sometimes, they've literally been in a cave for 6 months doing 3 hours of cardio on no carb, no fat, and they're just grind. I'm like, you're an absolute beast. You deserve better than a coach that is a moron. That is
yes,
obviously
absolutely.
never followed the plan they've given you. This
And
person's probably never been in prep half the time.
part of being a coach too is being able to communicate with your athlete and saying, if you need 3 hours of cardio and no food, then we don't need to do a show. We need to push it back. That's also part of being a coach. Because if
Mhm.
that is even remotely required, then you're not in a good place to be prepping for what you need to prep for.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was talking to a few well this I believe this was one of my current clients yesterday. She sent me some of her old meal plans, and she was telling me I don't know who the old coach is or anything, but she was telling me that this coach, it's somebody in her area, and she's like, yeah, this person is the go-to of the area, and this person just has all these athletes like brainwashed into thinking that this is what they have to do to get lean. And so it's just sad that they have that power over these athletes to brainwash them so much to making the athletes think like, nope, this is the way it's got to be. This is the only way you can be a successful bodybuilder. This is the only way you can get stage lean. And then that same client was saying that a lot of her old teammates that were coached at the same time she was by the same coach, like they're no longer with that coach and they don't even compete anymore because they're just so burnt out from it and they hate the sport. And like that's exactly what these approaches do to people, unfortunately, is make them resent the sport and make them never want to get on stage again because they think that this is how it has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I've gotten a lot of those messages. Hey, I competed like 4 or 5 years ago. This was my diet. They send it and then they go, yeah, so I didn't ever make it to stage. And when I told my coach I didn't want to compete, he made me feel terrible, talked shit about me, kicked me out of the gym or whatever. And so they just have a really bad taste in their mouths from the sport, which it's completely unnecessary.
And when you don't know any better going into the sport too, you just look for someone with more knowledge than you do, and you put trust in them.
Well,
And
generally
that's
those coaches have a successful athlete. They've had
Mhm.
either a successful athlete in the past, they have something that kind of makes them stand out. Um, and I've said this many times. Athletes are great in spite of many coaches, you know, not because of many coaches, right? So, a coach's job is basically to make an athlete better. A lot of these great athletes are just surviving their preps and they're just doing well on stage out of sheer genetic ability and hard work. And then you see them switch and you go, wow, they're really thriving now. Or you see them retire. They're done.
and also
Um,
some of these new don't understand shows. They're like, oh, well, my client won the overall at this show, or they won their class at this show. They don't know that there was one other person in that class. They don't know
right.
any of this stuff. They'll see
Yeah.
pictures and like, oh, that person looks good.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't really have to do a lot of digging. You can make yourself look really good on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or,
with
I
yeah.
think another thing that you have to consider too is like some coaches, they get a client who's already in such a good like spot genetically, just super blessed, and they don't have to do a ton to get that client to stage. So I think sometimes it speaks volumes seeing where that client was to begin with, and then what the coach helped them to achieve. Because sometimes you do see people that just get some genetically blessed clients and then they market them, but it's like really they didn't, it wasn't their coaching that got that person to where they're at.
Yeah. So I think the key for me is if you get a meal plan from a coach, take a minute and plug it into a nutrition app. It will literally take you a few minutes because if it's written out like with ounces and grams and whatever, you can literally just go in and put in 4 ounces of chicken, 100 grams of veggies, right? Get to the bottom and then make sure that your macros are within the acceptable ranges. For protein, you want to probably be plus or minus your body weight by 20 or 30 grams, for bodybuilders. We're pretty lean people. Um, you know, I'm fine with over indexing on protein, especially when clients are like, I really love protein. So I have some girls that are like 130 pounds on 160 grams of protein. They just love protein. I don't think they need that much or benefit anabolically, but they do well on that. Um, but likewise, I'm not going to have that same girl on 70 grams of protein, right? Like, I would never have an athlete below their stage weight on protein. Um, so that's kind of the number for protein. If you got a plan that's, you know, over 180, 200 grams of protein and you're 120, 130 pounds, it's more than likely you're sacrificing the other numbers. So fats should be around 20% of your total calories with the thresholds. I don't like to go below 35, 40 grams of fat. As Evan said, short periods of time, maybe even a couple days a week. And then we'll do some refeeds. And then, carbohydrates being the biggest variable. But I also get nervous when my carbohydrates of my athlete get below their body weight, right? So if they're, 120 pounds and they're at 100 grams of carbs, I know that they're going to start flattening out during the week. I know they're going to have some days. And if I have to get them down to 60, 70, 80 carbs, I'm going to be doing at least 2 high carb days a week of like 150, basically doubling their carbs. So I don't know. I struggle to not understand after a decade of doing this and putting out information and climbing the ranks of success. It'd be one thing if we were like, yeah, this is the healthy way to do it. We never win. It's that right there. I've got 3 Olympia qualified athletes this year. So it's not as if we're not succeeding at the highest level of the sport and, doing so with an approach that does not run people into the ground.
Right.
It's part of it is I think people just don't know better and they do what their coach did before them and they have no knowledge, no background, no understanding of it, and no desire to learn. A lot of it's a money game with them. They don't care. And the more people they can get and spit out meal plans for that takes 2 seconds, why not? And unfortunately, that's the way some of these people are with it. And the ones I have the real problem with are the ones who know better and do it.
Yeah. I have two interesting scenarios. These are not like meal plans per se, but two interesting things that came from people that so one person said in their meal plan they were only allowed to drink egg whites. They weren't allowed to cook them.
Hmm.
And then I have another person that said during the last few weeks of prep, she had to drink green or peppermint or dandelion root tea every time she ate a meal.
This makes sense. I'm sure that was the difference between first and second.
Oh, for sure.
This is dandelion root. Yeah, the diuretic tea.
It felt great.
Yeah. Was this peak week plan stuff, or was this that's what I always wonder when people send stuff over? Like, is
Yeah,
that
would.
sounds like a peak week thing? Like dandelion root tea is something people use for diuretic purposes. That's the only thing I can think of.
Right. Yeah, I would, they didn't specify, but I would figure, I'm not sure about the egg white situation. The girl who said she was only allowed to drink egg whites and not cook them. I don't know if that
That
was
I mean,
doesn't
I'm
make any
definitely going to do
logical sense at
another
all.
reel on peak week plans and show
Yeah.
what they should look like. I've actually been working on a YouTube video. I'm going to go through a whole peak week with a client, because that's another whole, yeah. I've got a peak week plan that's really funny. It's
Oh.
literally like, no salt. It's like chicken and asparagus and fish all week.
Yep.
I'm like,
They
you
smell
will look,
great.
yeah, but
Well,
they also look terrible.
right. And I always think, at least this would be me. I know my body, and I feel like a lot of females are the same way, where if you're on chicken or tilapia and just veggies all the time, I know I'm not going, like, I would not be going to the bathroom. And then that creates another problem. And I think I hear this a lot from girls like who are on meal plans like this, where, I'll say, oh, how's your digestion? Are you going to the bathroom routinely? Like, how do you feel? And they're like, oh my God, no, I don't go to the bathroom without like a laxative, or I just feel like my stomach is always distended. And like that creates another problem. You think you're doing a good thing by having, just a lean meat and vegetable, but you're getting absolutely no fiber. You're not able to go to the bathroom. Your stomach is super distended. You're uncomfortable. And like, that's just a whole slew of issues within itself.
Because there's not enough fats to push anything through. It really just sits in your
Right.
stomach. It doesn't digest. And it's
One of my favorite things to do is, have a hamburger the night before the show, because that red meat and the fat from the meat just has such a benefit for the digestive system to just get things moving. And honestly, sometimes getting things moving, your body starts to absorb them better, right? So your digestive system can start to, like, you're not even absorbing the nutrition from the food you're taking in. It's just sitting in there. A lot of minerals are only fat soluble, so they're not getting broken down and getting used. So they're, even if they're passing through, they're just not getting absorbed and taken into the intestinal wall. So yeah, it almost sometimes feels weird to tell someone to have a hamburger the night before the show, but when you've seen it work hundreds of times, you start to get excited about it. Another one is like a high sodium meal a couple hours out from stage. I love to do that. Because you just start to harden up and fill out.
And again, that's what we're talking about, the variances in sodium, right? That's a time you want to have a variance in sodium, because it will increase the water absorption at that point and help you fill out, especially if you're flat. It will help you fill out. That's a time you want to manipulate sodium. You don't want to drop it all week to zero, because it takes some time for your body to react negatively to sodium changes. Normally like 24 to 48 hours. It doesn't happen like this with it.
Yeah.
I have
you said with it. You said with it. That's your catchphrase.
That's right. With it.
That's right. That's Evan's catchphrase. I have an
With it
interesting.
good.
Somebody told me. So this is a female competitor, and she said that, I know this is not her current coach who did this, but she said she was at 600 calories, shrimp and cereal only, with 2.5 hours of cardio. But shrimp and cereal only.
Why not just make it shrimp and grits?
At least that would be good.
Now,
I'd eat that every meal.
The only time I would think that would be appropriate is if this person had severe digestive issues. Because I've actually had a girl the last couple of days out from a show only have cereal for her carbs because she just digested it well, and everything else was bloating her. So like, you can probably look at anything through a pinhole and give it and be like, this is a bad idea. But it's got to be a case-by-case scenario if your coach is actually paying attention. Daraja eats the hell out of shrimp. She eats all shrimp in prep. I don't make her. She just loves to digest it well. And honestly, shrimp is one of the greatest macro-friendly foods there is. It's basically just protein.
Oh,
protein.
yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with eating incredibly lean foods. If you want to eat fish for every meal, do it. Look, I think fish digests incredibly well for the vast majority of people. So if you can afford good, high-quality cod, eat the hell out of that. Please, I eat it. But that doesn't mean that you can't have some added fats with that, a little avocado, a little olive oil, some almonds, whatever it might be, something with it. And it doesn't even need to be every meal, but you cannot go literally no fats for days and days and days and days and days on end and
Right.
it not impact your gut negatively. And it will show in your stomach. It absolutely will.
Yeah. And I think the reason, because I mean, pretty much all the meal plans that I was sent yesterday all had like whitefish or tilapia on them. And I think that tends to be a very common thing you see on meal plans. And not that there's anything wrong with whitefish or tilapia. And I think why you see those on meal plans is yes, they are very lean, they have no added fat, but they generally digest very well for people. Like I know people who just struggle with their digestion in general, usually leading up to show day. For my clients in particular, I will recommend like let's do lots of fish, whitefish, shrimp, just because those things generally digest a little bit better by nature than things like chicken or even beef. Again, it's person dependent, but I think that's why you see whitefish a lot on meal plans.
Yeah, the one thing I get to with whitefish on there is I like whitefish. I think it's great.
Mhm.
My like kind of one I do not ever recommend is the tilapia thing, just mainly because it's just such a low quality food. And it's the whitefish with the highest fat too. And it's not good. So if you're going to get something and you're going to eat fish, that's the only issue with it is just going to cost you a little bit of money if you want to do
Yeah,
that. I'd
fish,
rather have somebody
halibut.
have lean
Halibut is
chicken.
delicious, but it is a little more
Halibut's
expensive.
great. Halibut, cod, all that's really great. Mahi mahi is awesome, but it's more expensive. It's more expensive. And if someone's gonna go that route, I would rather them have chicken or turkey or pasture raised anything other than like tilapia with it. But people have it because it's affordable, and I understand that. Like, because seafood gets expensive.
It's also fish is the one thing. My first prep, I did a lot of tilapia. One thing I remember is how easy it was to prep. I could put like
Mhm.
8 or 10 tilapia fillets in the oven in like 12 minutes. They were done.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
like meal prep, and whatever you put on it is what it tastes like. So it's like
Mhm.
basically tasteless.
Yep.
So and I was never told to eat tilapia. I was just on macros, and I was like looking for foods that,
Yeah.
when I'm doing macros as for myself, I don't like foods that have like a lot of macros. I like them to be like either just a protein, just a carb, or
Yep.
just a fat. That way you get a lot of volume. And so, I start to avoid things that are like either high in fat or high in carbs if they have something else in them.
And that's what makes it really easy to create meal plans, people. Keep things that are very protein specific, very fat specific, and very carb specific. And then it's super easy to rotate them out. It's not
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. And if your fiber is low, fiber is great for digestion. And sometimes people can be like, I can't get any fiber. And I'm like, there's so many low carb options like strawberries and blueberries and, beans that give you a ton of fiber without a ton of calories.
Mhm.
Right.
So,
And take
Right.
a fiber supplement. If you don't like foods that have fiber in it, take a fiber supplement. It's not as good, but
everybody likes strawberries.
yeah, I mean, true. No
Strawberries are
one
great.
dislikes those.
My favorite is, and I always have these on prep, is dry roasted edamame. I just love them, but they have a lot of fiber in them. And yeah, they've got a little bit of fat and carbs, but they have protein in them. But I just think that, I mean, it's a landslide for fiber, so that always helps me to get in my fiber. But I think another issue with some of these meal plans are that, I don't know about you guys, but I've had clients that will come to me with these meal plans and I'll ask them like, how long have you been on this meal plan? And they'll say, oh, I've been on this for, 4 or 5 months now. And I think
That's
there's an issue, there's an issue with when you're literally having the same 5 foods for 5 months at a time, you are getting absolutely no variety in your diet. And then you're probably going to give yourself a ton of like these food intolerances, right? You're going to have all these issues when anytime you try to eat anything off your meal plan. So I think food variety, I mean, it's okay to like the same foods and to eat very similar things day to day, but I think you should, rotate in some new things from time to time to just create a little bit more variability in your diet. For example, maybe one week instead of doing strawberries, you do blueberries the next week, or maybe one week instead of red potatoes, you do sweet potatoes. Like small variances like that, I think are important just for, just for variety.
I mean, I know the way Hani does it, I think is, well, in at least a few circumstances that I know, he'll mix up carb sources in meals. It'll be like red potatoes, cold potatoes, and rice, like all in one meal with that varieties of each. So that way you're getting a couple different sources in there at the same time. And they all have different mineral benefits, right? They do. And a good benefit to sweet potatoes, for a little hack out there for everyone who wants hacks, is if you are trying to reduce artificial sweeteners towards the very end of a prep, to dry out, and this doesn't really apply to bikini as much as to other divisions, is you can use sweet potato as like a wet binding agent. with that to make dry foods go down much easier.
Oh, I thought you were going to say put cinnamon on it because I used to do that.
Oh, I do that too. Oh yeah.
That is
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Cinnamon and stevia.
Yeah, baked potato, like anything in the oven, like especially sweet potatoes, if you, bake them for like an hour, they start to, like the sugars start to caramelize. They almost like taste like dessert, especially at the end of a
Mhm.
long diet.
Oh, I even
If you use
have,
too much cinnamon, it can't thaw off your blood work though in a few different ways. So I have seen that with things. So people can overdo cinnamon on things.
Oh no, it's just it gets too chalky for me. It's just more of
Yeah.
like a light dusting. Yeah.
it's interesting, not that we're trying to like throw out hacks, but on the topic of sweet potatoes, something that I found that tastes very similar if you're in prep and like you need a lower carb option, carrots, like get carrots, air fry them, and that way they're a little like they're very soft on the inside, and I swear they taste very similar to sweet potatoes.
See that?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of prep, carrots taste sweet to me. Like there's,
Ah,
Yeah.
that's
especially
that's when I know I'm shredded, when I'm like, man, these carrots taste way too damn good. Like this is not how good a carrot is.
right, right. Well, okay, another thing I want to bring up too, I wanted to bring up at one point in this episode is I know we talked a little bit about it before we started recording, but some things like that I see on meal plans that just make me laugh are like when a coach has 10 almonds or a handful of almonds or like 4 asparagus spears, like they don't specify the size or anything like that. And okay, with asparagus, it's not going to probably make a huge difference. But when we're talking almonds, 10 almonds, not specifying the size. I mean, are we talking tiny almonds? Are we talking huge almonds? Like that could be a big variance in fat day to day. And, it may be a 5 gram fat variance day to day, but like if you're doing that for weeks and weeks, of time, it can really add up really quickly. So I see a lot of these just not like these very bland and basic terms, or like 100 grams of fruit, but not specifying if we're talking 100 grams of like strawberries or 100 grams of banana. There's obviously going to be a pretty big variance there that can add
Yeah.
up over time.
Yeah. And this is again why macros, even if you're on a meal plan, understand the macros that you're getting. As a coach, when we're taking a client through prep, if I've got someone on a set amount of macros and I want to adjust it, I know exactly how many calories they were on. I know their new calories and I know how they responded. The people that are on the same meal plan for a long period of time, there's not really a reprieve. There's not any type of recovery or, I haven't seen them talk much about diet breaks. And I'll say that's been the greatest probably addition to my toolbox of coaching, has been taking people out of prep, mid prep, and going, okay, we're going to take a recovery week. I'm going to bring your cardio down, your food up. And, you almost restore them back to off season, like mood and energy and digestion. And then you're able to go again. If you've been grinding like on this type of a meal plan for a long period of time, you are set up to absolutely fail after your show. Food eating disorders, digestive distress, your taste buds are going to be out of whack. So anytime you eat anything that you haven't had, you are going to binge the shit out of it. God forbid you go to a restaurant. God forbid someone offers you something at a restaurant or a party. You're going to eat all of it. You're going to struggle because you haven't had those things. And without that variety and without that knowledge of, like Lexie, you said it earlier, if you're not on the meal plan, you're off the reservation. There's no in between.
Yep.
Whereas, with a flexible approach, if someone's like, oh, I got to go to a wedding, I'm like, hey, just earlier in the day, just eat a little bit less carbs and fats, bank up some calories, and then you don't even have to track, just eat responsibly. So to me, it's the right way to prep for that reason, because you're setting the person up to succeed on stage and then after the show.
Yes.
It's not a successful prep if you get a trophy, but you never compete again.
Right, right. And I feel like that's where a lot of people they kind of go wrong, is they only think about the prep. They'll just do whatever it takes to get on stage looking their best, and then they kind of fail to think about that post-show experience. And I had a client, I've worked with her for a while now, and she came from somebody who had her on a very strict meal plan, and everything you just mentioned, Paul, like the binging, just having these severe food intolerances. Like, she experienced all of that when she came and worked with me. And I mean, it's taken us probably a good year to get her to a point where she's actually able to eat like a normal human now. Like, she's able to incorporate variety and not blow up every time she eats something that she hadn't had in a while. So it can, I mean, it can take a long time too if you prep super aggressively, and you may have to spend the next year just correcting the issues that you brought upon yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So if anybody listening has questions or concerns, feel free to message me, Evan, Lexie, Steven, anybody from the team really that, because we all understand the same philosophy of how prep should be. You know, coaching should be, attentive. It should be individualized. And, earlier I used a term called coaching mills. So when I first got into the sport, there were these teams that had sometimes in excess of 1,000 clients, right? And oftentimes before I knew much, I was friends with them. They were in my gym. And then I would be like, oh, what's your nutrition like? Because I was working with Lane Norton at the time, who was this black sheep of, contest prep style. He was one of the first people doing macros. He learned from Dr. Joe. And so they would be like, oh, this is my meal plan. And I'd be like, well, that's funny. I just saw the same meal plan yesterday. And they were, they're with one of the big teams. Everyone knows the big team out of Florida that kind of went defunct. I just was like, why would you? And they would almost laugh about it. Like they would be like, haha, I'm on meal 3, tilapia and asparagus. And they're like, yeah, girl, me too. And I'm like, they would almost like, thrive that they were suffering the same. Right. And so they just, that was just the way it was. And if you guys haven't watched the video on my channel from Jamie Calais, she was on that team, had eating disorder behavior. They called her fat at the show, gave her a total mind fuck. She was a mess for a while. She came to me. We had to reverse for multiple years to get her back to normal. Ended up doing so, but that's kind of like, that was my entry into that world, was like, holy crap, these competitors are so determined to be on the same team with the same girls that are going to the Olympia or whatever, that they're willing to put up with whatever just to say they're on a team.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I know what team you're talking about, and I have a client who came from them as well. And the thing about being like called fat and everything, she had the same experience. So there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah. And I always had this assumption that like, okay, you went out of business basically, and they're back in business now. And I'm like, okay, maybe they've learned their lesson and they're applying some new business practices, because we do things differently. I do things differently now than I did 10 years ago. I don't do things the same. I try to provide more value. We send videos to every client. That wasn't a thing when I started. Phone consults before every client. That wasn't a thing back when I started. So like, we're trying to do better. Our client dashboard tracks sleep, stress, digestion. We track all these wellness scores, daily steps. That's not something. So I think a coach should be trying to improve the process for the competitor, for the athlete, for the lifestyle person. It should be about, okay, how can I do this better over time? But I see these people just doing the same crap. And that's the annoying thing for me, because they have the potential to do better.
Right.
Do better.
Yes. And as a client, I mean, whatever coach you go with, I mean, the beauty of this industry is that there are so many coaches, some good, there are some that are bad, but you should choose somebody who is a good fit for you and who makes this experience enjoyable. Like, even if it is prep, we all know prep is a grind, but at the end of the day, you should enjoy this to some degree. And if the approach you're getting doesn't allow you to enjoy this, or if it doesn't enhance your life or enhance you as an athlete, then maybe that's not a good fit for you.
100%.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's enough ranting on today's topic.
Yes. Well, it was a good one. And like you said, Paul, if anybody listening has,
Since we got on this call, I have 13 new DMs.
wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Here's the thing too, guys. Just because your food is low at certain times doesn't mean it's abusive. If you have questions of concern, ask your coach. Say, hey, why are my carbs only at this amount? And why
Right,
haven't they changed? Ask
Exactly.
questions.
right,
Ask
right.
questions, because guess what? Maybe they have an actual logical answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great
Ooh.
point.
I
Because
don't like to cast stones without knowing everything, right? So
right, right. I had somebody send me their they were not on a meal plan. They were on macros yesterday and she was like, "Hey, what do you think of these macros? I'm X weeks out." And I said, "Well, I mean, I can't really give you a say. Yes, they were low, but I also don't know. I mean, maybe the coach has a plan to do a diet break or some refeeds, and in that case, the macros would be fine, right? So, yeah, I think if you're concerned with your approach, just not being afraid to ask your coach, hey, do we have, what's your tentative game plan moving forward, or can I get a little insight as to why we're at these numbers or why we're on this protocol? It doesn't hurt to ask.
I'll take it even a step further. Coaches, message us. If you're a coach that's like, man, I've been sending meal plans and I thought this was the way to do it, reach out to us. We'll help you. I would like to raise the game of the coaches out there. It's not, we are not in the business of gatekeeping success in this sport. We want to open the gates to everybody. I have videos, I don't know, 1,700 YouTube videos at this point on every aspect of nutrition. Look at how do you do a refeed? How do you do a diet break? Should you do low carbs? What are macros? Like all that stuff is out there. And I'm still continuing to put out that content. We're not, I've literally, like, my goal one day is to win the Olympia and literally give away the peak week plan for my Olympia winner and be like, look, here it is. This is what it takes. Because I think there's this misconception that like more complicated is better. That's the other thing. I see overcomplicated plans that you go, oh, and when I speak to them, they're almost brainwashed where their entire day is spent just sticking to the plan. At 3 p.m., you take this pill. At 3:15, you drink this. At 3:45, you train. It's like
Oh,
that. Yeah, it's to where like you're literally your entire day revolves around eating every 2.5 hours, and it's like, man, that's not beneficial at all. Maybe you like it, but that's not beneficial. You don't need to do that.
like
um,
if that helps a person like get their mind off things and that's the way they like to do things, I could see that. But that's most
Yeah,
people got other shit going
creating a
on in their
structure
life.
around your day, but that person probably has kids and a job, and
Yeah,
they're
they
like,
got other things.
yeah,
And especially if you've done everything you can up until that prep and it's 2:30, you got to go pick your kid up and they had some issue going on at school, it's going to get in your head, oh, I didn't have my meal this time. I didn't take my supplements. I was going to throw everything off. I didn't do it right. It'll cause anxiety and stress.
yeah.
No reason.
no, that's
I can
another
promise you
one.
that stress and anxiety will kill your physique 10 times more than missing your pill at 2 p.m.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, stemming off of what you just said, Paul, this is why I love having you guys, love having all of our coaches on the team, because I think we all, there's all times where we throw ideas off of one another or get feedback or just, get some like I think we can all learn from one another. And I think that's like coaches, it should be that way. Like you said, it shouldn't be like just a gatekeeping tactic. We should be able to learn from one another and ask for help or ask for advice if we need it.
So the last thing I want to touch on is this new trend of, on that plan that I mentioned to you guys, they had added metformin. Metformin is meant to control appetite for people that have, health complications due to obesity, or perhaps they are diabetic and they have it for health reasons. Adding it as a form of control for a competitor is very concerning. Competitors don't have problems restricting their calories, as highlighted by the fact that these people are able to eat on 700-800 calories per month at a time. So this is probably another concerning thing. I don't know if it's the coach not understanding what the medicine does, or just thinking it's an easier route to make sure they stick to their plan, because obviously shitty nutrition plans are harder to stick to. Yeah, I don't know. Have you guys come across that at all?
The only thing I can think of is that was on someone's plan in an off season when their food was high and they just never pulled it off.
No, this was, remember I showed you, it was
I
10
know.
10 milligrams
I'm
of
just
our
wondering if it
metformin.
was on the list and they just never hit the delete button on it. That's the only thing I can consider.
No. So yeah, if you're on some type of anti-blood sugar medication,
That's
run like the wind.
yeah. That is very concerning. Yeah, I've thankfully I have not seen that on meal plans, but I feel like that's just maybe a coach who doesn't understand truthfully what that is for. I don't know.
Unless the person is prescribed it and has to have it for some
Right.
reason. That's the only other thing I can think of. You don't need metformin at 60 grams of carbs a day. It doesn't make any sense. Like there's, I don't know
No,
why you would do that.
and you're on an anabolic substance like Anavar,
Right.
and you're on a diet that diet was probably 50 or 60 carbs and 20 fat. You're, yeah, the concerning one was the stomach paralysis, right? It actually starts to
Yeah.
paralyze the stomach. I've had some friends that did it that told me they literally couldn't even eat. Like it was very hard for them to even get their like protein in for the day. Yeah. So yeah, that's probably another. I don't know if that's, sometimes you see these things start to build some momentum and you go, nah, that's not going to happen. And then you start to see everybody doing it. I would hope it's not that it's not a thing.
I hope not.
Everyone's looking for something.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that was a very successful discussion.
I think so too.
Hopefully we provided some value to the people that are on. At least ask your coach. At least start a conversation. If the response is shut up and listen to me because I'm the coach, that means that they don't know the answer.
Yes.
That's it.
And if the answer is anything other than, oh yeah, let's discuss it, then why are they coaching you? They're not a dictator. Coaching should be a symbiotic relationship. You should be able to go back and forth. I have clients that discuss things with me and I go, you know what? I don't usually do it that way. Let's do it that way and see what happens, and cool. And if it goes well, great, we learned. And if it doesn't go well, then I was right and we'll try it my way. And, so that's people know their bodies better than we will ever know them. I mean, there's some athletes that I feel like, after a couple of years, they don't even have to check in. They'll be like, hey coach, this week, this is what happened. I'm going to go ahead and add 20 carbs. I'm like, perfect. That's what I would have done. They start to, you start to get that rhythm, but, yeah, it should be a very open discussion and conversation. And anyone that doesn't want to get on the phone with you or, discuss things with you, probably there's a reason why.
Yep. Amen.
Always have a why behind it. If you don't have a why behind it,
Yeah.
if they can explain the why, they're not gatekeeping information from you. They don't know the answer.
Yeah, they don't know the answer, or they're going to give you an answer that shuts you down. I've often had, competitors come to me, but like, hey, I don't want to bother you. Hey, I don't want to bother you. And every week they say that. And eventually I have to go, why do you always say that? You're not bothering me. This is all I do. This is my job. And they go, oh, well, my last coach would get mad if I texted them or would yell at me. And I'm like, okay, well, you have to unpack that trauma. That's not what this is. I would never want anyone to feel like they couldn't message me, text me, jump on a call with me at any point. If I had a coach that was that way, that I felt like I was bothering them, I wouldn't want that coach. Like, you should feel comfortable.
Yeah, if you have questions or concerns or emergencies or anything like that, please reach out and ask.
Yeah.
And what I want clients to understand is there's a difference between reaching out when you have a concern for something and then just reaching out because you want an answer right then in your board. Like that's different.
Yeah. No. It's, yeah, absolutely. That's something that you discuss on a consultation call. Yeah. Yep. Setting expectations. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I think I have a reel coming out today. I'm going to do one every day this week. This one's on the proper amount of protein in a diet, but I think doing one on the next week, maybe next Monday, I'll do like, if this is your peak week, because that's how things work on Instagram. You kind of got to draw people.
Right.
So I'll be like, and George edited it, put on Forrest Gump. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh, he's the best. He's great at editing.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll keep this conversation going. I think it'll be a good one. And our fun podcast where we talked about the sport of bikini, we're about to find out what happens Saturday at Junior Nationals. We're about to find out the numbers.
Yeah, I'm very interested because I know, yeah, that episode of Is Bikini Shrinking, which a lot of you guys commented on that, which was awesome. So it'll be interesting to see what the numbers are this weekend. Or, well, this will
Okay.
come out on Monday, so we'll have an answer by then.
Yeah, it'll be, I'll probably put something in my stories about the numbers just because I know a lot of people are actually, they've been messaging me, asking me. But yeah, I have all that data tracked. So
Okay, cool.
if we don't see, I think it was 119 last year at Junior Nationals. So we'll see if it's down from there. We'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. All
We
right,
shall see.
guys.
All right, guys. Thank you for
Appreciate
listening to
y'all.
the Pro Physique Code.